The 10 of discs is called wealth, and here we see the discs are once again coins and are shaped into the form of the tree of life. We can also see this on the Rider-Waite card. It's actually very similar to the Thoth card, and it shows an abundance of the beauty of the world all around us. This card is quite interesting because it is actually the final numbered card, and so as a 10, the energy usually comes down and filters itself into the next suit, where here of course there is nowhere for the energy to go, and so it has to be reborn, or it can represent everything of which we have experienced throughout the tarot journey, finally showing itself in all aspects of the universe, hence the tree of life. And so wealth is not just material wealth and physical money, but represents wealth in every aspect of life, in every aspect of existence. And of course that is what the tree of life represents. It is every aspect of existence, here emblazoned with the coins showing wealth. Purely on a tree of life perspective, it's in Malkuth, and it's in Malkuth in Isaiah, the manifested world. And of course the final destination of the energy, beginning in that oneness and coming through all these different experiences, will end in Malkuth, in the formative physical manifestation. And once it's here, we have to actually know figuratively what to do with it. Does it just keep manifesting and manifesting until the world is literally full to bursting? Well, obviously that probably wouldn't work, so the energy would have to be channeled into something else, and that's usually where it would go down into the next suit. And yet of course here there is nowhere else to go. This is the final card. Astrologically it is Mercury in Virgo, and very strongly we're going to see the element of Mercury coming up in this card. But Mercury of course is communication, Virgo is good at organising and getting things done, and so putting these together, things would move very, very quickly. So in physical terms like business ventures, it's not bogged down by red tape and bureaucracy and things like that. It's literally just getting out there and making it happen, and it manifests extremely quickly. And so clearly this is something of which is really good with regards to the accumulation of wealth. We see it in New Thought, the universe like speed, and all these type of platitudes, which essentially represent the same thing, that stagnation is not the way to go, of course. Instead, we manifest, we move on, we experience everything in existence. And so that's why we have the tree of life shown here. It's all the different elements of existence. And in fact all of the sephiroth here represent symbols of Mercury, apart from the 8th sephiroth, Hod, of which shows something different, of which may help us to understand the quandary in this card and actually how to move on. And so the first 3 sephiroth, which are Kether, Shokmar and Binar, show astrological symbols of Mercury. So beginning in Kether, we just start with, of course, the oneness, the purity of the element, and so we have the astrological sigil of Mercury. Now with Shokmar and Binar, we of course have a masculine and feminine energy, so you can forget your Mars and Venus. Men are from Shokmar and women are from Binar, and so the sigil in Shokmar, the masculine energy here, shows the symbols of the planets all brought together and formed into a Mercury sigil. So it's called the unification of the planets in Mercury, and it's an alchemical symbol. And so it's like the potential of all of these planets here being communicated, of course, via Mercury. And so it's a little bit like a seed, really, with all of the potential of all those planets all brought together into this one element. And then coming across into Binar, we have another sigil, another alchemical glyph, of which is Mercury and the Tree of Life. And so this is supposed to show sephiroth within it, representing the Tree of Life, but it's very difficult to actually see them. And so of course together that is the seed, of course, entering this Binar, which is this womb of creation. And of course when they unify, we see that element of the tree of life, which is what they call the magical child in occultism, the seed, the conception, the potential of a new life being created, a new, of course, conscious expression of everything in the universe, of whom will literally go through this cycle of being born and having to figure out what everything is in the world and so on. And of course here we reach that end. It is born, it is manifest. The next one down in Chesed is a little bit different. Here we see the Enochian letter Pe. Now Enochian, of course, is an angelic alphabet coined by John Dee and Edward Kelly, and so this represents a whole system of magic based on this allegedly channeled angelic language. And the Enochian letter Pe would be the equivalent of our letter B in English, and so it's the second letter, and it's the magician tarot card, or the magus, of which again is ruled by Mercury. Of course, the magus also represents ceremonial magic, and he holds the staff of which links heaven and earth, Kether and Malkuth. And so moving on to the next sigil in Geberah, we see that manifested here, and so here we see the Hebrew letter Beth, and this is actually associated with the Magus tarot card, and also again by extension with the element of Mercury. Now according to John Dee, the biblical character Enoch was the last human to actually understand this Enochian language until it was deciphered by them, hence the name. And the Book of Enoch is also one of the first times we hear mentioned of the archangel Raphael, and that brings us of course to the next element, of which is in Tiferet. So right in the middle here of the Tree of Life, we actually see the Hebrew lettering for Raphael, and so that brings us to the archangel Raphael, of whom is associated both with the sun and with Mercury, and this is important for when we get to Hod. And so of course that is the coming together. It's Tiferet, it contains the elements of all of them put together, and so it's important that the sun is in there as well. And of course the archangel Raphael actually means God heals, and so he's associated with healing and also with our journeys, and so we have that Mercury and sort of Hermes image there as well. And he's also shown with the staff, which brings us back to the magician tarot card, and with Mercury as well. And also just staying with him for a second, because this is the last of the numbered cards, we may look at the Archangel Raphael in a stranger manner here as well. With Islamic eschatology, it's often said that Raphael would be the angel of whom is actually responsible for blowing the trumpet on the end of times, so on the day of judgment. He is the one of whom would actually sound that trumpet, taking the message from God to say this is the end of this physical world. And of course this card at the end of these numbered cards, and so it's rather odd that would come up in there. And as I say, we're not sure at that point where these things are going to go when they have nowhere else to come down into. Now in Yesod we can see a magical pyramid, of which is similar to a magic square, and this contains within it numbers associated with Mercury. So this is deeply esoteric. It's essentially numbers of which can be drawn through to intersect with each other, and the numbers are corresponding to divine names of Mercury, of which all have a value of either 8, such as the sephiroth Hod, or 64, and so we add these together, we intersect through them. So the intelligence of Mercury therefore would be 260, which we see in there, and the name of the spirit of Mercury would be the value of 2080. And so to actually get these numbers, you write out the names in Hebrew and then add up the value of each actual individual letter, so each Hebrew letter representing its numerical value and even its individual sound, if we want to go back to that idea of them as separate seeds and so on. And so it's a bit like a yantra, of which is like a spiritual antenna tuning into a particular type of frequency. This one here is the frequency, very much so, of Mercury. Now we've left Hod for a moment, we're going to come to that secondary So if we have a look at Malkuth, we'll notice that firstly the coin is actually bigger than all of the other coins, and also it contains within it a sigil of Mercury, of which is comprised out of the Hebrew letters Shin, Mem and Aleph. And these are the three mother elements of the Hebrew alphabet. They are fire, water and air. They're the primordial elements that actually make up the earth, and so of course they're here in Kingdom, in the physical world of Malkuth, and so they are Mercury as well in that respect, and it is the symbol of the caduceus, the staff. As the coin is bigger, however, than the rest of the coins, this can represent something of what happens when the energy becomes too big. It has nowhere else to go, it's becoming bloated, and so of course that's not a good thing for energy to overtake us. If our bodies continue getting bigger and bigger, it wouldn't end well for us. You know, if we just accumulated things, eventually we would run out of place to put them. The earth itself, you know, pollution, overdevelopment, things like that. Where does energy go? What is its meaning? This oversized coin represents energy becoming stagnated, just filling up and filling up and filling up, having passed through all of the universe, and now it's got nowhere else to go. So it's like a pool of stagnant water without an outlet to allow it to change and to continue flowing. And so of course this brings us to the sephiroth of Hod, of which doesn't contain a Mercury symbol, but instead contains a sigil of the sun. And we can also see Hod echoed in Netzach, of which shows an 8-pointed star. And so this represents not only the sephiroth of Hod, of which we're going to come to because it's the 8th, but it is also Mercury, because Hod is ruled by Mercury. And so altogether we have these mercurial symbols leading down into the sephiroth of Hod, of which shows the sun. And so Hod, of course, as we've seen before, is concerned with the mystery of form, and so it's how things actually come to be as they actually are. And by understanding how they actually are, of course, we understand what they mean, such as when we come to realise that they aren't actually physical, but they're made out of vibrating frequencies and so on like that. But in terms of the pure card, of course, the hexagon, the hexagram have 6 sides each, and so if we do 6 times 6 we get 36, of which, lo and behold, brings us back to Mercury again. And we could also find Mercury by simply adding up all the different numbers of the sephiroth until we get to the 8th, so 1 plus 2 plus 3 and so on. And when we get to Hod we will be at number 36 yet again, so that's the number of Mercury. And of course that is a conjunction, and so if we look at then Mercury and Virgo, the astrological signs here, they are in conjunction, and so we have here of course a descending triangle, of which is the female energy, and the ascending triangle, of which is the male energy, and these can also be as above so below, and the microcosm and macrocosm. It's basically the accomplishment of the great work, of which is Hermeticism, the bringing together of opposites, the finding of the one in between them, the joining together of the forces, which of course if you watch every card will have that symbol in it, most cards anyway, at least in some respect. And so astrologically as well, here Mercury, communication, speaking, the word, could represent the Greek word for the word and reasoning and order, of which of course is the logos. And so here we see this idea of an order in the universe, a meaning in the cosmos, which is a world away of course from scientific materialism. This is showing a great intelligence present in everything, a meaning even into those tiny vibrations that actually make up these so-called physical things. And of course in Christian doctrine and in writings, the logos is also associated with Christ, and Christ as a principle of God, of whom could be active in the creation of this cosmos, in revealing the divine plan in Christian mythology of salvation. It would be to humans, and would also be, again, returning to the more simple aspect of this, the masculine element. Therefore, of course, Virgo would be the Virgin, of which could represent the Holy Virgin Mary, which would be the mother of Jesus in that respect, and can even represent in a more physical attribute the Virgin, as in the potential of birth of a new life, which is what we saw right at the very beginning with the elements comprised within the Tree of Life, representing the new life being created. And of course, when the new life is created, it experiences everything in the universe and comes to understand, if it studies it of course, this order and divine intelligence in the universe, and it's a cycle. In fact, Crowley actually describes the card in the Book of Thoth as the Ten of Discs being a hieroglyph of the cycle of regeneration. And so that's how things don't get stagnant, and that's how the whole thing begins again. When that new life is born, of course, we're going to start again with the entire thing and the Fool, and going through the whole journey of the tarot. It's a great card to draw because it's wealth, and so it could be actual riches and money, and it could be accumulating all the wonderful things that you want in the world. Again, as we've seen, wealth is not just physical riches, but is wealth in everything all around us in the world. And of course, when we are wealthy, whether it's physically, materially, spiritually, all those around us benefit from it as well. It's great high energy, and it really shows our place in the universe has come to fruition, and we've really understood all this stuff, and we're in a position to allow the cycle to start again, to impart the wisdom, to hold it in our hearts, and allow it to flow into whatever form it takes as it starts this wonderful journey once again.